It's with great pleasure today to introduce His Grace Ravindra Svarupa Prabhu, one of the pioneers of the Sankirtan movement, one of the earliest disciples of Srila Prabhupada, who's distinguished himself in so many ways it's hard to count. Emeritus GBC member, temple president over many, many decades, and one of the great thinkers of ISKCON, who has led the way in philosophically guiding the movement itself in many of its most difficult periods of time through his profound writing. He's given direction and light to the entire ISKCON movement. And for longest time we've desired to have him come out, and now here he is before us. We welcome everyone who's joined us online this morning and all the devotees who are on their way driving here. Please don't break the speed limit. We thank you very much, Ravindra Svarupa Prabhu, for making this journey out here, even though it's a very busy time in moving from one ashram to another, that you just moved locations, but still he took the time to fly all the way out here. So since there's 8 of us here and not 80 right now, to give him a welcome, we're going to have to make up for it by giving him the warmest, loudest ISV welcome in the history of ISV. We welcome His Grace Ravindra Svarupa Prabhu.
Thank you so much. We have a technical problem here. Where the microphone is and where the screen is, occludes the screen. Yeah, that's better. Let me see if I can. We'll manage somehow, rather. Anjakalpatrubhischa kripasindhibhya vajapatitanam bhavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Thank you for your warm welcome. Should we chant a little bit first and just see what these kartals are like? I'll chant. This is just basically, I'm giving a Bhagavatam class. So I'll chant Jai Radha Madhava. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Gopi Janabalabha Giridhara Dhari Jaya Gopi Janabalabha Giridhara Dhari Yashoda Nandana Brajajana Ranjana Yashoda Nandana Brajajana Ranjana Yamunatira Vanachari Yamunatiravanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunda Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunda Bihari Jaya Gopi Janabala Bhagiri Varadari Jaya Gopi Janabala Bhagiri Varadari Yashoda Nandana Brajadana Ranjana Yashoda Nandana Brajadana Ranjana Yamuna Tiravanachari Yamunatiravanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunda Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunda Bihari Jaya Gopi Janabala Bhagiri Varandari Jaya Gopi Janabala Bhagiri Varandari Yashoda Nandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yashoda Nandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yamuna Tiravanachari Yamuna Tiravanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunda Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunda Bihari Jayam Vishnupad Paramahamsa Paribrajakachaja Ashtottara Satasi Siman His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Ananta Koti Vaishnavrinda Ki Jai ISKCON Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai Prem Se Kaho Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Sri Vasadi Sri Gaura Bhaktarinda Ki Jai Samaveda Bhaktarinda Ki Jai Gaura Premanande All glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the lotus feet of Sri Guru and Gauranga. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pastaya Bhutale Shrimati Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namane Namaste Sarasate Deve Gauravari Pacharani Vishesha Sunyavari Paschachade Satarane Umangyanam Timurandasya Ganandjana Shlakaya Chaksurun Viritam Jainam Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha Vanjakalpatrubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Bhyevacha Patitanam Bhavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Prabhupada told us that you have to take the medicine according to the directions on the bottle. So this is concerning about Prabhupada's Srimad Bhagavatam. And we find that there are directions in the Bhagavatam for reading and for understanding Srimad Bhagavatam, and in fact all of Prabhupada's books. And so I want to delve into this a little bit deeply. The general word used in the West for the science of understanding is hermeneutics. It's a technical term that people used. It comes from the Oxford English Dictionary calls hermeneutics the art or science of interpretation, especially of Scripture. It comes from the Greek Hermes, Latin Mercury, the deity in charge of speech, writing, and traffic communication, you know. So that's the idea. So the Oxford English Dictionary does this very useful thing sometimes, is give instances of usage over the years. So for hermeneutics, for example, they cite a 1843 usage. The meaning of the word hermeneutics is defined this way: the meaning of all language, written or spoken, is developed by the application of general laws, generally termed hermeneutics. In 1871, somebody writing about primitive cultures said, "No legend is safe from the hermeneutics of a thoroughgoing mythologic theorist." Turns out Prabhupada's not safe either from those people criticizing what Prabhupada does. And interesting, in 67, religious theorist named McQuare, in a book called God Talk, said, "We could say that that history is the hermeneutic of historical existence, or even that physics is the hermeneutics of nature." Interesting, huh? So there's a wide application for that particular idea of hermeneutics. There's actually a whole field called philosophical hermeneutics. But so Prabhupada did this very interesting thing. His translation and commentary on Bhagavad-gita has got this Bhagavad-gita as it is, which is a big red flag for a lot of people who, but Prabhupada meant it. So he, for example, in the beginning of the preface to Bhagavad-gita as it is, he says, he writes, it is only that I have tried to present Bhagavad-gita as it is without any adulteration. Before my presentation of Bhagavad-gita as it is, almost all the English editions of Bhagavad-gita were introduced to fulfill someone's personal ambition, but our attempt in presenting Bhagavad-gita as it is to present the mission of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna. Our business is to present the will of Krishna. Our only purpose is to present this Bhagavad-gita as it is in order to guide the conditioned student to the same purpose for which Krishna descended to this planet once in a day of Brahma. So already you got this idea of a day of Brahma. What is that? Anyway. He says, the purpose is stated in the Bhagavad-gita and we have to accept it as it is. Otherwise, there's no point in trying to understand the Bhagavad-gita and its speaking. So Prabhupada's talking, how to understand it. To interpret Bhagavad-gita without any reference to the will of Krishna is the greatest offense. In order to save oneself from this offense, one has to understand the Lord as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, as he was directly understood by Arjuna, Lord Krishna's first disciple. So there it is, because when the Bhagavad-gita is not just an essay, it's spoken, and somebody was hearing and that person responded in a certain way. And Prabhupada says, and again his introduction, he says, therefore Arjuna tells Krishna that he accepts whatever he says to be completely perfect. Sarvam etadritam manye, I accept everything you say to be true. And therefore, Prabhupada says, Bhagavad-gita should be taken up in a spirit of devotion. One should not think that he's equal to Krishna or and so on. The person who is trying to understand the Bhagavad-gita, we should at least theoretically accept Sri Krishna as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Unless one reads Bhagavad-gita in a submissive spirit, it's very difficult to understand Bhagavad-gita because it is a great mystery. So there has to be some, initial degree of faith, and here again, I'm taking now. This is from a lecture Prabhupada gave at 72 in Hyderabad on Bhagavad-gita 2:13. Prabhupada said, he quotes Krishna, aham adir hi devanam, aham sarvasya prabhavo mata sarvam pravartate. If we do not accept Bhagavad-gita in terms of the statements given by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, then it is useless. It is simply a waste of time. You cannot make any commentary of your poor knowledge. There's nothing very difficult to understand in the Bhagavad-gita. It is written very simple Sanskrit words. That's true, the Sanskrit's really, really simple. I mean, you can read Bhagavad-gita after a year of Sanskrit, practically, Then you go to Bhagavatam and you, It is very simple Sanskrit words. Everything are very clear as the sunlight. Where is the question of showing up the sunlight or the sun god with your lamp? Self-luminous. So therefore, you get those are kind of basic principles of scriptural understanding that Prabhupada gives like that. The text is infallible. You have to accept it like that. You have to receive it from the proper authorities. That some kind of faith is a prerequisite, precondition for understanding it. So therefore, here's a scholar of religion, Eric Sharp, wrote a book called The Universal Gita. He mentions Prabhupada's Gita in there. And this is what he writes. He says, in short, the Bhagavad-gita as it is remains substantially an impression of what a particular corner of the Hindu world imagines that it is. Imagines in italics. But because of the great energy and enterprise which went into the furtherance of the Krishna cause in the 1960s and the 1970s, it creates an impression which was altogether more concentrated than that emerging from any other branch of the Neo-Hindu movement in the West. A body of devotees was created, prepared to treat the Gita precisely as the Christian revivalist world of a century earlier had treated the Bible, with no greater or lesser justification. So here's a supposed scholar of religion going to take one thing from the Christian world, which is Christian fundamentalism, and say, and he uses the word precisely the same. What an idiot. I have to say, I mean, it's just, I mean, for somebody who's a scholar of religion, they ought to have a little more discernment of, you know. Like. So that's it. You take what Prabhupada has said, and, oh yeah, this is simply Christian fundamentalism with a Hindu, you know, transformation. So this is our Purva Pakshan, you know, the other side. Who we have to deal with, that Prabhupada's principles are simply the same. And neither do I think Sharp really either understands Christian fundamentalism, where that comes from, or even what is supposedly his area of expertise. So, but it's true, I mean, Prabhupada put the flag up there, you know, he did say Bhagavad-gita as it is, and he wasn't, and by the way, there is somebody has written a book called Bhagavad-gita as it was. To understand it in its proper historical context, and all these other kind of things. This is going on, but it's true that Prabhupada, you know, he liked to be provocative, and left it for us to deal with the repercussions of that. Yeah. So. Yeah. Where to start? Okay, well, I'm going to look at this Bhagavatam here. This is Canto 1, Chapter 3. Krishna is the source of all incarnation, and this is an interesting text. This chapter, because it has Ete chamsakala pumsam Krishnastu Bhagavan Swayam. Which, according to Jiva Goswami, that particular text is known as the Paribhasa Sutra of the Bhagavatam. Now, this is actually very traditional hermeneutics, in the sense that there are understanding of principles for understanding Scripture that comes from Jaimini, the sage Jaimini, the Purva Mamamsa. And there, in a culture of, an idea of sacrifice, a culture of, because Jaimini was the Karma Mamamsa sage dealing with that. So how to understand the injunctions of Shastra, and so there's a whole science there of taking the Vedic text and understanding them properly, and we use that quite a bit. So Jiva Goswami, writing in the Krishna Sandarbha, defines that. I'm taking this from Shivaram Swami, book Shuddha Bhakti Chintamani, in the 6th chapter. He says this about this Paribhasa Sutra. He says, a Paribhasha Sutra is an unequivocal statement that establishes the theme of a text in which there may be apparently unrelated or even contradictory statements. And he goes on, Srila Jiva Goswami gives an elaborate and fascinating argument in this Krishna Sandarbha, one of the Sat Sandarbhas, Anucheda 29, to establish that the Paribhasha Sutra of Srimad Bhagavatam is the shloka beginning, Ete Chamsa Kala Pumsam. Remember that in this text there have been many enumerations of various avatars. And then it says, all of these are kala or amshas, parts or plenary parts. But Krishna is Bhagavan Swayam, Bhagavan himself. In his Krishna Sandarbha comment, so this is considered to be the thesis statement of Bhagavatam. In his Krishna Sandarbha commentary, Jiva Goswami gives the following definition. A Paribhasha Sutra explains the proper method for understanding a book. It gives the key by which one may understand the true purport of a series of apparently unrelated facts and arguments. Thus, if the direct meaning of a statement seems to contradict the Paribhasha Sutra, then such a statement should be interpreted in such a way that it conforms to the governing theme of the Paribhasha Sutra. Vishwanath Chakravarti says, commenting on Bhagavatam 1.3.28, the same text, he says, the Paribhasha statement situated in one place lights up the whole scripture just as a lamp lights up the whole house. He says, this sutra appears in once in the work and is not continually repeated. Oh, you may, it's just one text. Why are you taking it, Though there are millions of statements in the scripture, this sutra controls them all like a king. Thus, statements which contradict the sutra must be explained so they agree with the sutra. This is because these contrary statements are weak, since they belong to secondary subjects in the work, and because the sutra statement is strong, being supported by Shruti. Thus, these statements should be harmonized with the sutra by giving them another meaning according to the rule. He quotes a statement here from Jaimini Sutra. That's the idea of this Paribhasha Sutra. And of course, Prabhupada follows along in the same lines with this Ete Chamsha Kala Pumsam Krishnastu Bhagavan Swayam. And then you'll notice in this chapter, and it's also very good when reading Srimad Bhagavatam, you go to a temple and they're doing one verse, and one verse, we kind of deal with the verses discreetly, but when studying Bhagavatam, you really have to look at the whole context it occurs in. And so the context of this chapter is quite important, because here we've had the Paribhasha Sutra, which is text 28, which we've just discussed about this. And then it says in 29, whoever carefully recites the mysterious appearances of the Lord with devotion in the morning and the evening gets relief from all miseries of life, which is very interesting, that just to do this does something for you. Then it mentions the Virat Purusha as one of the forms of the Lord that's kind of secondary and not so important. So there's the gross form of the Lord, and there the transcendent forms of the Lord. And then goes on to describe the Lord as the absolute truth, that is to say, the ultimate source of all energies, janmadasya yataha, that from which everything comes. And then the book talks about itself. After describing and remember where this is taking place right after the disappearance of the Lord. He's gone now. They're dealing with the shock of the Lord's having left, and so therefore it says that talks idam Bhagavatam nama. This is text 40 in 1.3.40. Paranam Brahma Samitam. This Srimad Bhagavatam, this idam Bhagavatam, is Brahma Samitam, which Prabhupada translates as the literary incarnation of God. It's another form of the Lord. So we've talked about different forms of the Lord, and so now this very Bhagavatam is another form, compiled by Vyasadeva, meant for the ultimate good of all people, all successful, all blissful, all purpose. Vyasadeva delivered it to his son, who extracted the cream of Vedic literatures. Then Shukadeva delivered it to Maharaj Parikshit. And of course, this is Sutta Goswami speaking to the sages at Naimisharanya Forest. And then he says, text 43, this Bhagavata Purana is as brilliant as the sun and is risen just after the departure of Lord Krishna to his own abode, accompanied by religion, knowledge, etc. Persons who have lost their vision due to the dense darkness of ignorance in the age of Kali shall get light from this Purana. Now we can understand when Prabhupada came to America, he had trunks full of the first canto of Bhagavatam that he had brought with him. This is the reason that he brought it. It's the one, just thinking of that, those boxes of Bhagavatams coming now to illuminate the West. So Krishna has departed. The Bhagavat, as he goes down, the Bhagavatam comes up. And so you shall get light from this Purana. And then we have text 44. Tatro kirtayato vipra viprarsher bhuri tejasaha aham chad yagamam tatra nivishta tad anugrahat sohamba shravavishami yataditam yatamati. O learned Brahmanas, when Shukadeva Goswami recited the Bhagavatam there, that is to say in the presence of Emperor Parikshit, I heard him with rapt attention, and thus by his mercy I learned the Bhagavatam from that great and powerful sage. Now I shall try to make you hear the very same thing as I learned it from him and as I have realized it. So this text then, and Prabhupada's purport, is basically our instructions how we should understand this text. Because here's the instant. The Bhagavatam has arisen. We have now a little bit of one after the other, the parampara, the literal meaning of parampara, one after the other, that has already happened. And Prabhupada has already, as he will speak, mentions disciplic succession, that he has come in disciplic succession and wants to continue this succession. And Prabhupada brought the books with him, but we will understand how he had to create the audience for the books. And so that how the message is transmitted is already given in the book itself. So when Prabhupada comments on this text now, so he's saying here, the Sutta Goswami, I was there, which is good news for all these people who are gathered. They want to perform some kind of sacrifice because Kali Yuga has begun. We should do something. And as it turns out, their sacrifice, their yajna that they're going to perform, is in fact Sankirtan. By the way, the word Sankirtan should be properly understood. Maybe before we go any further, let me just backtrack a little bit on that word. We are the word Sankirtan. This is of course Sankirtan yajna. That's our process for this age, right? It's a sacrifice. It's a yajna. Doing what Vedic sacrifice used to do. And it's Sankirtan. Now the word kirtan, to speak about the Lord, glorify the Lord, chant whatever, to speak. And then the prefix san, that when something is done completely, perfect, thoroughly, that's the idea of san. If you look it up in the Sanskrit dictionary, Mona Williams dictionary, they say that the prefix some, with, together with, along with, like that. And when it's used as a prefix, as is in Sankirtan, it expresses conjunction, union, thoroughness, intensity, and completeness. So all of those things should be there. Not that we're doing this as a group effort together, unified. It's not just when you go out on the streets that there's Sankirtan. But here, when devotees are together, speaking about Krishna, that's also Sankirtan. And it's done completely, thoroughly, intensely. So this is the Yuga Dharma, right? The Sankirtan Yajna, the sacrifice for the age. So that Sankirtan, even when you do japa by yourself, in a sense it's Sankirtan if you're doing it thoroughly, completely, intensely, you know. And Prabhupada would have us come in the temple in the room. We would chant our japa. It's a private exercise, but we would do it in the room together. So that was also, because really it means that we are conducting everything in some way or another that we do is in the association of devotees. Sometimes you have to be by yourself, but being by yourself is often bad association. Your own mind, right? Your enemy. Before it's been converted, it's your worst enemy. So that's part of our Sankirtan. And he uses the word yajna. Now, the case can be made, the word yajna, people think of it as a religious performance, as a religious ritual. Because the basic meaning of the word is to worship or to perform a sacrifice. You have priests. You have a yajamana, that person to whom the benefits of a sacrifice accrues. So when a sacrifice takes place, all those things have to be there. The Vedic sacrifice was a culture of technique, very much so. In fact, material sciences come out of the culture of sacrifice. For example, to perform a sacrifice, you need a lot of geometry, because you have to have the right place, and then everything is exact. You know, the sacrificial pit has to be such a certain size, so you have to have a lot of geometry. And you have to have a lot of astronomy, because the time has to be exactly correct. So therefore you get astronomy. And so there's so-called material sciences originally, because of the precision, and you get linguistics, because, you know, I mean, if you look at the Sanskrit alphabet, it's not, the English alphabet, A, B, C, D, I mean, what is that, you know? But in Sanskrit, you get the vowels and they come from here. Somebody has looked exactly how sound is articulated in what places of the mouth and lined them up. You know, you go from the back to the front. What an alphabet. And I must say, you know, when the Europeans discovered Sanskrit, it blew their minds. And it created a kind of cultural crisis for them, because they gradually recognized this was the mother tongue of Latin and Greece, which was their, you know, sacred languages for the intellectuals. And this is where it came from. And they had done things better. Now, of course, they were Europeans, and they thought themselves to be culturally superior to these little brown guys running around in oversized diapers. Anyway. And how did they have this, you know, this superior? And therefore, you know, they came up with this idea that the Aryans came down from somewhere else further north, and anyway, that's another thing. But yeah, it's a brilliant science of linguistics that all starts from the sacrifice. So really, they study Vedic sacrifice in the religion departments, but it wasn't. It's much more like a science, a science today. Like, for example, the brahmanas had to be pure. This is like if you do a chemistry experiment, your test tubes have to be clean. Any contaminant gets in, even a little bit of contaminant can blow the whole thing. So you had to be really good to have all extraneous things out. So when a brahmana had to do a sacrifice, he had to be clean. He had to be able to pronounce the words precisely, correctly, you know, and his mind had to be pure. So what a scholar would call ritual purity is just purity. It's just cleanliness for a particular kind of sacrifice. Now, the other thing a sacrifice was very potent was mantra. Now, I have a book in my shelves called, well, it's boxed away now, but I had a book on my shelf called Understanding Mantras, and it says that the mantras present a particular challenge to today's scholar, it says. Because it says, we don't believe in magic. He says, we don't believe in magic. The idea that mantras may have potency. We don't believe in magic. Most of us don't even pray, he said. So it's just a challenge, how to understand mantras when we don't believe in magic. Because to them, magic. But magic means simply an archaic science that you don't know how to work it anymore. That's the other thing. You see, we always think we're advanced in the modern world. You know, we know more than our ancestors. But the fact that people may actually know how to do mantras, and the mantras may actually work, that is, you can say a word and something will happen. They will be efficacious. They can't do it. Why can't they do it? Look how they live. They don't have the proper laboratory conditions under which to do these things. For thousands and thousands of years in India, people were performing sacrifices, and it was worthwhile to fund them because people were getting results. I mean, sacrifices are expensive. You had the yajna, the one to whom the benefits of the sacrifice accrued, and that was the king. They weren't all deluded by a bunch of priests. They got things. Things worked. So all people have these kind of unexamined presuppositions. So a sacrifice, a yajna, is a science. It's a science we can't do anymore. The conditions are not favorable anyway, so the yajna for today is Sankirtan. That's the one that will work for us under these times and but it is a yajna. It's an efficacious sacrifice. And I quite believe, by the way, personally, that it's been quite efficacious. And has already had, has already had cultural effects. When the Sankirtan starts to really have its effect on the culture, what you will see is what we're beginning to see, and which I could foresee, was polarization. Some people will become more in one direction, and they're the people that will hate it, and they will be in the other direction. There will be polarization, and Prabhupada actually can confirm this, because he once predicted that in the future there will be some kind of which he described as the second battle of Kurukshetra. He said to me personally, I was in the room with him, he said, there should be a war. He said, these wars where the demons fight the demons, they don't accomplish anything. But if you have a war on one side is devotees and the other side demons, then it is Krishna consciousness. Yeah, actually, Prabhupada's really, we had a political party once, in the In God We Trust Party for Purified Leaders, and we had some, Balavant and myself were in the room with Prabhupada. And he said this, therefore there should be a war, he said. He went like this, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, that is Krishna consciousness. Making his hand like a pistol. Then I freaked out. There was no tape recorder on, by the way, but this actually happened anyway. Because I'd been in the movement not very long, but there were already some devotees that scared me to death. And so I had to doubt this idea that we should actually attain political power. And so I said to Prabhupada, you see a day when devotees will command armies and run countries? And he said, yes. So my question I formulated to Prabhupada was, how can we be sure, under those conditions, that we won't become demons? And Prabhupada's answer was, chant 16 rounds a day and follow the 4 regular principles. And I said, and that's enough? And he said, yes, that's enough. So I was very happy because he didn't say something vague. It was like, 16:4, there were numbers there. And the only thing I learned in the course of time is that some people will do that for a while and then give up. So you have to do it in a sustainable way. I would add that particular footnote, 16 rounds a day in a sustainable way. That is, you have to chant while trying to give up offenses, at least chanting on what we call the clearing stage of chanting. And then it will be efficacious. You don't have to be yet completely pure, but you have to be becoming pure. You have to be improving. That's what he said for our age. I forgot how I got off into this. Anyway. Yeah, so this Sankirtan movement is supposed to change the world. Prabhupada announces this in the beginning of the Bhagavatam. It's a cultural presentation for the re-spiritualization of human society. And it will be re-spiritualized when it is recognized as a science. We got these compartments. This is science, this is religion. Science deals with truth and power. Religion deals with some sentiment. Something maybe help you out psychologically a little bit, but the real things, we keep it out of government. We keep it out of all the real interesting things like making money and having political power. And of course, we do have what Eric Sharp confuses with fundamentalist Christians who want to take political power, and we know what that means. And we have fundamentalisms all over the place. Even in the University of Chicago, Martin, the Fundamentalist Project, because we now have Christian fundamentalists, Jewish fundamentalists, Hindu fundamentalists, by the way. They called that the Hindutva. And we're a little different from Hindutva, at least I hope so. We'll see what happens to our movement in India. Because those Hindutva people kind of appreciate us. I recognize when Prabhupada brought Western devotees to chant in India, people really appreciated us. And I realized that for a lot of Indian people, they viewed it as just payback. The Christians had been converting Hindus to Christianity. Now we're converting Christians to Hinduism, all on this very superficial level, where even words like Hindu or Christian, I mean, what did Prabhupada say about these terms, Hindu and Christianity? They're not real. What's the meaning of Dharma? Is it this religion or that religion? No, it's what you really are. And people are on this level of, yeah, he's a Hindu, he's a Christian, he's a, And if you meet and talk with such people, we may find ourselves starting to adapt their wrong use of words. So we had this is all hermeneutical issues in a way that we understand why Prabhupada wouldn't use the term Hindu for us. And I remember myself and some other GBCs had a meeting with the Hindu Vishwa Hindu Parishad here. Can't you at least say you're Hindus, you know? And we said, well, you know, Prabhupada said that we're not the body and we're all spirits, souls. Yeah, that's true. But so I said to the guy from the Vishnu Hindu Parishad, I said, I guess you have to be a Hindu to understand you're not a Hindu. Because they know, you know, it's not, it shows up in Bengali, but it's not Sanskrit words, you know. It's a upadi, extraneous imposition. So our idea is to get off of what Prabhupada described as the mental platform. You want to get on the platform of the soul. Prabhupada described different cultures: the culture of the body, the culture of the mind, the culture of the intelligence, and the culture of the soul proper. Are you familiar with this? He mentioned it in one place, but it's very important. So if you look around us, we see the culture of the body everywhere. To take care of the body, and you know, restaurants, health spas, all these kind of things, mostly dealing with the body. The culture of the mind, that's in our universities and places like that, Stanford, MIT, wherever. I spent a lot of time in universities myself. I have a PhD to my discredit. And what you do, you know, in a department of study in a university, the most devastating thing you can say to somebody is, "Oh, we don't do that anymore. We don't do that here." It's like a woman wearing the wrong kind of skirt, whether they're long or short or this style or that. Fashions change, mental fashions change. Just the same way and for the same meaningless reason that fashions in clothes or watches or hats or automobiles. You notice how they're always changing? And if you have the right thing, you're in. If you have the wrong thing, you're out. Right? Same way on the mental platform. Ideas go in and out of fashion. And it's not even that something is refuted and we go on. You get tired of doing the same thing and you go on and doing something else. So, you know, idealism and philosophy goes out, and then they go back to realism, and then people get tired of that, and then it's neo-ideal, you know. It's just, that's the mental platform. You mess with something for a while, you do it, then you get tired of it, and somebody says, we don't do that anymore, and you do the next thing. Right? The mental platform, the culture of the mind. The culture of intelligence, Prabhupada said, is Bhagavad-gita. Buddhi yoga. Dadami buddhi yogam tam yena mamu payanti te, Krishna says. The Bhagavad-gita is the culture of intelligence. The point of buddhi, buddhi is not much understood outside of Krishna consciousness, maybe, what it actually is. How does manas, the mind, differ from buddhi? Because buddhi is higher. And ultimately, Prabhupada describes buddhi as the form direction of the supersoul. We have mindsets, and buddhi determines entire mindsets. And when there's overthrow of one whole mindset with another mindset, that sort of happens on the level of buddhi. Conversion takes place. Maybe somebody, Thomas Kuhn's work, The Structure of Scientific Revolutions, he talks about these things where, you know, the phlogiston theory goes out and the atomic theory comes in. You live in a different world. They're incommensurable ideas of looking at things that are more like religious conversions than anything else. That happens on the level of buddhi, mindsets. And the ultimate function of buddhi is the correct placement of faith. Because faith can be correctly placed and it can be misplaced. And if it's faith, how does that take place? Huh? So Bhagavad-gita is really about the correct placement of faith. To take you to the point of surrender to Krishna. He looks at all the other places you can put your faith. And then sarvadharman parityaja mamekam saranam vraja. So Bhagavad-gita is the culture of intelligence. The culture of the soul proper, Prabhupada says, is Srimad Bhagavatam. Dharma projita kaitavotra, where Bhagavad-gita ends, you just, give up all of the dharmas and surrender to me. And then Dharma projita, now having given up all these kaitava dharmas, here is Bhagavatam. So those are the 4 levels of culture. Culture of the body, culture of the mind, culture of the soul, and culture of the intelligence, and culture of the soul proper. That's Bhagavatam. So now we're back to Bhagavatam. Interesting. Okay. So here in Bhagavatam, we are getting the instructions in the Bhagavatam how to read the Bhagavatam. That's what's here. So Prabhupada here, text 44. Prabhupada begins his purport. One can certainly see directly the presence of Lord Shri Krishna in the pages of Bhagavatam if one has heard it from a self-realized great soul like Shukadev Goswami. So here he's commenting, first of all, remember this is sutta, I was hearing from Shukadev. So, okay. So here you have some examples of hearing the Bhagavatam. Some paradigm cases, you might say, of how it's to be heard. It's very interesting that Bhagavatam contains as part of it how it should be done. This is the directions on the bottle, right from the very beginning, how we're supposed to do it. And so this is Sutta speaking of himself. And then Prabhupada says, you can see directly the presence of Lord Krishna's in the pages of Bhagavatam if one has heard it. Now, there's a subtle thing going on in this first sentence. Pages. Where's the pages? Yeah. He's speaking to the sage and they're hearing, right? Where are the pages? But we have the pages. I guess in the future, one can directly see the presence of Krishna on the screen. But anyway, the pages are maybe becoming obsolete technology. I don't know. But Prabhupada has done this kind of subtle thing without announcing it. And I think of him sitting in Vrindavan writing these, with his typewriter, his old-fashioned typewriter, thinking of the readers of his book that's to come. So this is another way of speaking, is to read this. But it's just very interesting how Prabhupada has done that without announcing it. It took me a while to even, notice it. Where are the pages, right? Here are some sages sitting around. They had memories in those days. So one could speak it and remember it and repeat it exactly as heard it. They had memories. But of course, the thing that gets your attention is this: see directly the presence of Lord Sri Krishna in the pages of Bhagavatam. See Krishna in the pages. That should be what happens. That by reading Bhagavatam you are with Krishna, because this Bhagavatam is a avatar of Krishna. We've been talking about the different avatars of Krishna and the different way Krishna has appeared, and even mentioned the material world as one of the appearances of Krishna, if you know how to recognize it. I mean, I'm involved with the fifth canto of Bhagavatam. Yeah, because the Temple of the Vedic Planetarium is taking the fifth canto and making a model of it, And when the fifth canto came out, people were freaking out in ISKCON. And then Prabhupada typically sat down with some reporters and said to them, we haven't been to the moon because the moon is further from the sun, so on. And that freaked out everybody. And then I realized not only haven't we been to the moon, we haven't even been to the earth. Read the description of the earth in the fifth canto. Right? We haven't even been, never mind the moon. Where's Mount Meru? You seen it lately? Huh? Prabhupada said he saw Mount Meru from an airplane window anyway. So there's an answer to that, by the way. It's in the Bhagavatam, as of all places. We'll take a little diversion of this, in case you have any doubts or anything. In Bhagavatam 4:29-69, we're taking a little side trip here. It's on my mind anyway. Look at Prabhupada's first line of the translation. Krishna consciousness means, you have it up there? Yeah, okay. Krishna consciousness means constantly associating with the Supreme Personality of Godhead in such a mental state that the devotee can observe the cosmic manifestation exactly as the Supreme Personality of Godhead does. The corollary has to be, if you are not associating, you see in the Sanskrit, Bhagavat Parshva Vartani, you remaining constantly by the side of the Supreme, by Bhagavan. Manasi Sattva Eka Nishta, with your mind being Sattva Eka Nishta, fixed strictly in Sattva, pure Sattva, Vishuddha Sattva, in full Krishna consciousness. If that's the way, then you can see the earth. Then you can see the earth. And then the example that's in here, Rahu is an invisible planet, but when it comes close to the moon, when the moon is eclipsed, you can see it. So that which is invisible when it comes close to the luminous moon becomes visible. So similarly, when we become close to the Lord, our mind becomes close to the Lord, we can also see the this idam, this world, this universe, the way the Lord sees it. And in the purport, we won't get into it now, but the other meaning that Prabhupada gives to idam is we can see our own subtle body with its past, present, and future. Our past karma, our future karma, And then Prabhupada remarks, if you have no future births, you will see your future karma in a dream. And that way it'll be done. The things that you would have had to undergo future births, since you're not going to take any more future births, you'll be seeing them in a dream, and then it'll be over. That's a very interesting verse for many things. But anyway, that's why we haven't been to the earth. Because to really see the earth, you have to see it the way Krishna sees it. And that's given in the Bhagavatam. Just a diversion here. People want to sometimes, when they're dealing with Bhagavatam or Bhagavad-gita, well, I accept this part, but I don't accept that part. You can't do that. Either it's all right or it's all wrong. Yeah, I think the Bhagavatam is right about Krishna and Vrindavan, but when it comes to like being right about the world that we see, it's wrong. Well, how can you be wrong about what's more obvious to you and the things that are really more you're right about? Once you make yourself the authority, I accept this part and I don't accept that part, you're the problem to begin with. You go to the Bhagavatam because you're the problem, and now you're going to bring the problem, your problem, to the Bhagavatam. It's basically what's happening. Our own corrupted buddhi, our own material mentality, I accept this part. So Prabhupada is saying you have to accept the whole thing. This is what people call fundamentalism sometimes. And it scared me. I mean, I really had to deal with this. You know, part of my youth, I grew up in Texas and Oklahoma. And I knew Christians, you know, who all idea was you accept Jesus Christ in your heart as your personal Savior. I knew those people. And when I first encountered Krishna consciousness, I had that same fundamentalist, wow, you know, I mean, do I have to become like a great big stupid neon Jesus save sign? I mean, is that what our idea is? From these Christian fundamental, I was probably not fair to all these Christians, but I had met a lot of those people. I've met devotees like that too, so I'm not being prejudiced against. But anyway, it took me a while to realize what Prabhupada was talking about wasn't anything like that. The reason it happened to me is when I became a devotee, I was in my third year of graduate religious studies. The devotees all told me to quit. They showed me where Prabhupada said that the modern educational institutions are the slaughterhouse of the young, that I should quit. Well, I had just had 3 years of graduate work, you know, so I asked a temple president to inquire from Prabhupada what I should do. And Prabhupada got back word to him that I should get a finish and get a PhD. I just finished all the coursework. So I told the other devotees in the temple that Prabhupada said I should continue. And he says, no, you should quit. Prabhupada's just telling you that because you're attached. That was the, dropout mood of the early ISKCON. We had to drop out from everything. Prabhupada had no idea we had no idea what Prabhupada had in mind, the Bhaktivedanta Institute or all these other kind of things, So I continued, and then I wrote Prabhupada a letter asking him, I have to write a doctoral dissertation. Do you have any idea of suggestion? And he said, what if you like, you could defeat Darwin. And then I had another crisis, because I knew the people who didn't believe in Darwin. Christian fundamentalists again. And I don't know what to do. And then, of course, I thought, well, wait a minute, if the Bhagavatam is right, of course Darwin is wrong. Or he has to be wrong. And then I thought, well, but how can you show he's wrong? I had no idea. How can Darwin be, how can you show it? You know, it's science. And so I was kind of puzzling about how to do this. Then I met Sariputta, who had just become a devotee. He had been in New Vrindavan. Since he had just finished a PhD in mathematics from Cornell, they thought he should become the treasurer. He was not a good treasurer, because the real job of the treasurer was to say, where's the change, where are your receipts, you know. The arithmetic he could handle. So then they sent him out on traveling Sankirtan, because that's what else you did with other people you couldn't have around. So he showed up, and I just found out he just finished, gotten his PhD in mathematics. So I showed him Prabhupada's letter. I said, do you have any idea how you could defeat Darwin? And he said to me, well, he said, actually, I knew Darwin was wrong before I became a devotee, before I even met devotees. I knew he was wrong. He says, actually, most mathematicians know Darwin is wrong. They just don't say anything because it upsets the biologists so much. And he started to give me some arguments, which later we saw written up and so on. But that would really help me a lot, to have somebody say, yeah, most mathematicians know Darwin is wrong. They just don't want to upset the biologists, And he, using information theory and things like that, something else has got to come in from outside, to get something from nothing. Anyway, so anyway, these are all different reasons, I guess, to say what's relevant to our section. Why I have complete confidence in the Bhagavatam. I really do. And I don't think it's made me stupider. I think it's made me smarter. And so let's see what Prabhupada is telling us. We are to see directly the presence of Krishna in the pages. Now, to me, one key idea to this is the text Nama Chintamani Krishnas Chaitanya Rasa Vigraha. Shuddha of, what is it? Abhinatva Nami Namanaha. The name of Krishna is Chintamani, right? It's like the transcendental gem that gives you everything you want. Nami Chaitanya Rasa Vigraha. It is the form of all spiritual rasas. Purna, Shuddha, Nityamukto. It is full, complete, pure, always transcendental. Why? Abhinatva, because of being non-difference, nama, namanaha, between the name and the thing named. The vacha and vachaniya, the word, and that which is denoted by the word, on the spiritual platform, they are identical. And of course, this is their Nama Chintamani, the name Krishna. So when we chant the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, we are dealing with Krishna in the form of sound. And the idea is when we can say that name properly, more and more that identity between Krishna and Krishna's name becomes revealed. Names, by the way, I mean their names. Krishna is a short name. Om is a short name, one aspect of Krishna. The short names. Then we get longer names, and especially Sanskrit compounds. Jamuna Tiramanachari is the name of Krishna. Usually you read a compound backwards. He who wanders in the groves on the bank of the Jamuna River, Jamuna Tiravanachari. Somebody could be Jamuna Tiravanachari Das. If you wanted to be cruel, I guess. But anyway, you give people very long names. I think of the Srimad Bhagavatam as one long name of Krishna. It is a name of Krishna, and therefore this idea here that see Krishna directly, if you can see Krishna directly in the name Krishna, and the mantra, the Mahamantra, so Bhagavatam is a more fluffed out name of Krishna. Because actually because Krishna includes everything, Krishna and Krishna's energies, and the energies are three, when you say Krishna, you've denoted the entire content of reality. Haven't you? Really. There's Krishna and Krishna's energies, and we do not separate Krishna from his energies. Krishna is intimately associated with his internal potencies, a little more differently associated with the external potencies and with the marginal potencies. But because our philosophy is savishesha. The Krishna has variety. He has vishesha, the idea is the unity is there in the variety. So here, Prabhupada announces in the beginning the goal of actually understanding Bhagavatam is to see Krishna directly in the pages. It should be manifest to us. So, you have to hear from somebody like Shukadev Goswami. And then, one cannot learn Bhagavatam from a bogus hired reciter whose aim of life is to earn some money out of such recitation and employ the earnings in sex indulgence. He's talking here about the professional. It's funny, in America, professional means somebody's really good at what they're doing, and Prabhupada, professional means somebody's doing it just for the money. But they're good at it. I mean, I've heard Bhagavad Kathas. The guy was speaking in Gujarati, so I couldn't understand him, but for ceremonial reasons, I had to sit on the stage next to him and listen to it. And the audience was in tears, people are good at it, just like an actor. If they're talented actors, they can convince you and give you emotions and feelings. So similarly, these people the reciters can be quite talented in their way, just like they're professional kirtan people. One time in Mayapur, one of the early annual festivals, devotees had brought some professional kirtan singers, and everybody was just admiring how well they did it and how they played the mridanga so expertly and all this other stuff. And then Prabhupada was quite disturbed that we had brought them. He'd rather have our own sincere, inexpert, untalented renditions where we actually believed in what we were doing than we were people who were like... And I've seen them, people, and they walk away and smoke the bidi after they've been, so there are people who do this, who are not following the principles of Krishna consciousness. He mentions sex indulgence here. No one can learn Srimad Bhagavatam who is associated with persons engaged in sex life. Notice how he says that. I mean, your association has to be pure. That is the secret of learning Bhagavatam. Notice he has got the word secret. When Prabhupada uses the word secret or confidential, it means not everyone will be able to appreciate it. I mean, Prabhupada's telling us a secret, so it's obviously an open secret. But still, it was a secret because not everybody, well, I don't have to do that. There is a secret, and you'll see this word secret gets repeated several times in the text. So that's one thing. Then no one can learn Bhagavatam from one who interprets the text by his mundane scholarship. There's a whole other class that have been doing it. We have our own commentators, but if you go to the University of Chicago or Harvard, they'll give you a whole other way of understanding Bhagavatam by mundane scholarship. One has to learn Bhagavatam from the representative of Shukadeva Goswami and no one else. If one wants to see Lord Krishna in the pages, second time that's showed up, the idea of seeing Krishna directly in the pages. The representative, so Prabhupada's here alluding to we're looking at the pages. They're pages given by Srila Prabhupada. The author of these pages must be a representative of Shukadeva Goswami coming into cyclic succession. So he's introducing us to the idea of parampara, one after the other, in that way. That is the process, and there is no alternative. Clearly stated, there's a particular process. Sutta Goswami, the speaker of this verse, is a bona fide representative of Shukadeva Goswami because he wants to present the message which he received from the greatest learned Brahmana. That's his idea. Just as he heard it, he's going to repeat it. Shukadeva Goswami presented Bhagavatam as he heard it from his great father, and so also Sutta Goswami is presenting Bhagavatam as he had heard it from Shukadeva Goswami. So there's one after the other, presenting as they had heard it. Simple hearing is not all. Oh. How do we hear? One must realize the text with proper attention. Now here we have the introduction of the idea of attention, and not just attention, but proper attention. This is buddhi. Buddhi directs attention. People can go in the same place and they'll see different things because their attention is directed differently. What you notice, what you don't notice, what's important, what's not important. I look at somebody's face, a physician looks at somebody's face. We may see very different things because we know how to direct attention. Because we have been educated to notice, to pay attention and not pay attention. And people will see different things. A person will meet two different people and notice two different things about them, their level of intelligence. Another person will meet the same two people and notice that one is male and one is female, or one is white and one is black. That will be the big thing. All depends on what your attention is focused on. And buddhi is the form in which the Supersoul gives us direction, ultimately. We're there, the Supersoul is there with the soul, and that's how it is doing things, guiding our attention. So one must realize the text with proper attention. Now, attention can be directed, and then attention also becomes intensified. It can be, just vague, unintense, or it can be very intent. Whatever is the object of desire, for example, will focus your attention. Or danger, for example. If there's danger, somebody's got a pistol and it's loaded and they're pointing at you, it's got your attention. So these things that really make our attention intense or not. The word nivishta, here in the word for word, being perfectly attentive, means that Sutta Goswami drank the juice of Bhagavatam through his ears. It means like when you're really, really thirsty and parched, and then there's water, how eagerly you drink that water. This is drank the juice of Bhagavatam through his ears. That is the real process of receiving Bhagavatam. So again, he mentions like the secret, or there is a process one has to hear through one should hear with rapt attention from the real person. So notice the speaker and the audience. The speaker is qualified, the audience is qualified. Then it happens. There's an analogy you can make. There was a philosopher, a British philosopher named J.L. Austin, who noticed that certain kinds of speech he calls them performative utterances. Sometimes speech doesn't just do things, doesn't just mean things, but it does things. For example, let us say I'm a judge in a court. That's the speaker. The speaker is the judge in a court. The hearer is a person who has just been convicted by due process of law of a crime. He's the qualified hearer. The judge is the qualified speaker. He says, I sentence you to 10 years in jail. There's some potency there, right? He goes to jail for 10 years. If I'm a priest, a couple has come to me with a marriage license signed by the right person, and I'm a recognized authority to do weddings, I can say, I pronounce you husband and wife. They're married. I sign the certificate. If I just do it to walk up to anybody arbitrarily, I sentence you to 10 years in jail. What is it? Doesn't do anything, right? No potency. These are the kind of thing. Now, Bhagavatam is not a performative utterance, but it's like that. The speaker and the hearer have to be qualified for the potency of Bhagavatam to take place. And then, if the hearer have been trained to give rapt attention, and then has heard from the right person, then the hearer can at once realize the presence of Lord Krishna in every page. I use that word realize, experience. The secret of knowing Bhagavatam is mentioned here. And the secret again, the open secret. I mean, I've read Bhagavad, this part of Bhagavatam a few times before it finally dawned on me what was being said. So now, Prabhupada goes back to this rapt attention. How can we give this attention that's required? No one can give rapt attention who's not pure in mind. Oh. Now we go into our mind and we are going into a very dirty place, maybe, huh? It's like walking into a room that hasn't been cleaned in a couple of decades. Homeless people have been living there. Animals have died. Whatever, So we had to become pure in mind. How do we do that? Well, no one can be pure in mind who is not pure in action. So that means our behavior has to be changed. We have two sets of senses, karmindriya and jnanindriya. The instruments of receiving knowledge, the five in which the world acts on us, and then the karmindriya, the instruments by which we act back on the world, of speech, of locomotion, of manipulation. And Hamlet refers to his hands as pickers and stealers. They all do all sinful things, pickpockets and steal things, are contaminated senses. So pure in action. No one can be pure in action who's not pure in eating, sleeping, fearing, and mating. Or eating, sleeping, mating, and defending. Even the most basic, fundamental animal activities of life, which we share with every living being, some way of gaining nourishment, some way of resting, some way of mating, some way of defending ourselves. Even these most basic biological activities of life have to be performed in a way that is pure. And then Prabhupada summarizes, but somehow or other, if someone hears with rapt attention from the right person at the very beginning, one can assuredly see Lord Sri Krishna in person in the pages of Bhagavatam. And that's really far out. Now you know that when Prabhupada came with the books, that was only half. He had to make an audience. So that's why we had the International Society for Krishna Consciousness, to get people to become trained, to become the hearers, so that Bhagavatam could actually take place. If he just went and gave lectures in Bhagavatams to university professors, what was going to happen? You may start there, but ultimately he was looking for people. Prabhupada had a godbrother who, almost at the same time Prabhupada came, was coming to the West, was giving lectures to learned people in universities, and never spread the Krishna consciousness movement anywhere. But was going, doing something. But I have to say that Prabhupada came at the right time, at the right place. I always think of, Prabhupada sometimes castigates himself. He did this in lectures that, my Prabhupada, meaning his spiritual master, told me when I was a young man that I should preach in the West, but I was so attached to family life that I couldn't do anything until my own old age. So now I finally come here in my old age, and my spiritual master has sent you nice American boys and girls, so I can do something. But if he had arrived in 1955 or 56, I can imagine what would have happened. He came at the right time. Krishna's in charge of timing. And somehow Prabhupada had people that he could train to become hearers of Bhagavatam. And so here we are speaking about Srimad Bhagavatam, but following in Prabhupada's footsteps, we go to bring other people to become hearers also. So that's part of Sankirtan. It expands. It should naturally be expanding. Like Krishna is always expanding, the audiences for Bhagavatam should be expanding. So this is how Prabhupada is telling. When Bhagavatam is understood, the real understanding is you see Krishna directly in the pages. It's not exactly that the words are gone, but the words are seen for what they are. Abhinatva nama naha. Prabhupada continues this purport in the first text of chapter 4. That's another thing, is sometimes you have to look at the continuity of things. And he's going to talk a little bit more about realized knowledge. When Prabhupada says realized, it means experienced. Realization is experienced. So here, chapter 4 begins, on hearing Suta Goswami speak thus, Shonaka Muni, who is the elderly, learned leader of all the rishis engaged in that prolonged sacrificial ceremony, congratulated Suta Goswami by addressing him as follows. Now, the point is that we understood that they have because Kali Yuga has just begun. After the disappearance of Krishna, the Kali Yuga set in. And so now they understood there should be a sacrifice to alleviate the conditions. Again, the idea that there'd be some potency. And they were performing the Vedic sacrifice, because they mentioned their bodies are black with the smoke or the fires. They were doing Agnihotra yajnas and so on. But the sacrifice that they ended up performing was hearing Srimad Bhagavatam, which is the indication of the Yuga Dharma of Sankirtan yajna. And so Shonaka then responds. So Prabhupada then talks about the qualifications of the representative of the hearers. So he says here that Shonaka stood up to congratulate Sri Suta Goswami when he expressed a desire to present Srimad Bhagavatam exactly as he heard it from Shukadeva Goswami and also realized it personally. So this idea, now Prabhupada talks about this idea about what does it mean to realize something personally. He says here, personal realization does not mean that one should, out of vanity, attempt to show one's own learning by trying to surpass the previous acharya. He must have full confidence in the previous acharya. And at the same time, he must realize the subject matter so nicely that he can present the matter for the particular circumstances in a suitable manner. So somehow or other, it fits. I mean, there's actual communication. There's a relationship between the speaker and the audience. And because of that relationship, the attention is there, and the way of speaking is appropriate. Then Prabhupada says here, in this edition it's in italics. If you look at Prabhupada's original Bhagavatams, he used boldface. The original purpose of the text must be maintained. So there's a certain faithfulness that's there. No obscure meaning should be screwed out of it. Yet, it should be presented in an interesting manner for the understanding of the audience. This is called realization. The leader of the assembly, Shonaka, could estimate the value of the speaker, Srila Sutta Goswami, simply by his uttering yataditam yatamati, as I have understood it and I have realized it. And therefore he was very glad to congratulate him in ecstasy. No learned man should be willing to hear a person who does not represent the original acharya. So the word, he's probably talking about representation. So representation means to represent. It's to present over again. But it doesn't mean that it's just a rubber stamp, you know, without your own engagement in it. So the speaker and the audience were bona fide in this meeting where the Bhagavatam is being recited for the second time. That should be the standard of recitation of Bhagavatam so the real purpose can be served without difficulty. This situation is created. Bhagavatam recitation for the extraneous purpose is useless labor for both the speaker and for the audience. Nothing happens. It does not take place. It does not take place. So it takes place when these are the conditions. Realized knowledge, how to explain it? You make it your own. It becomes part of your life. When it comes back out, it'll have a certain inflection or a certain characteristic of being alive. And therefore, in that lively way, it will become communicated and people will be able to grasp it. So our really idea in our Krishna consciousness movement is to continue Bhagavatam. We do have books people read by themselves, but the initiation of devotees is essential. That's the Sankirtan movement. It's very, very hard, isolated from devotees. We may have sometimes association by electronic means and at a distance and so on. Take advantage of it. Prabhupada was all for fully taking advantage. Although sometimes he was a little worried. I remember one time in the early days of the movement, someone suggested to Prabhupada that there should be telex machines so that the temples could communicate with each other. And Prabhupada rejected it, said, increase pajalpa. So all you Facebook, Twitter fans may notice that it makes pajalpa easy also. But anyway, there should be, it also helps Krishna consciousness, but anyway, we're stuck with it. It's going to happen. We have our technologies. Prabhupada used them. So we will conduct Krishna consciousness. So anyway, Prabhupada very interestingly, there's Bhagavad-gita as it is. We can get some idea of what he was thinking of and how it is possible. By the way, the word "as it is" actually comes from Chaitanya Bhagavat. Yeah. Prabhupada mentions this in the purport to Adi Lila 17:18, where it's described the Lord Chaitanya's Sata Praharya Bhava, the 20-long hour ecstasy where he manifested all different forms of himself. And Prabhupada mentions in the purport that it's in the Majja Khanda chapter 9, and he Prabhupada summarizes some things that happened, that he showed Murari Gupta his feature of Lord Ramachandra. He displayed himself in different Vishnu forms, all were in Lord Chaitanya. He offered his blessings to Haridas Thakur, and at this time he also asked Advaita Prabhu to Bhagavad-gita as it is. And then Gitara Shachapata, Bengali. The word pata, same in Sanskrit. This nice old-fashioned Bengali is sadhu bhasha. You know, it's educated, highly Sanskritized Bengali. Pata means the reading of a text. The study, pata. Recitation, to read, recite, teach is pata. So we find that in the Majja Khanda, 1066, where we have the phrase Gitara Satya Pata. And the way it's translated, after explaining the actual purport of the Bhagavad-gita verse to Advaita, Vishwambar hid the door of the service. So he's, and the commentary here by Bhaktisiddhanta is that hitting the door means that certain followers of Advaita Acharya didn't, he explained it to, I don't know which, I couldn't figure out from the context which verse is talking about in the translation here. My Bhanu Swami, they mention a actual verse. And Prabhupada says, anyway, it says here, Bhaktisiddhanta's purport is here actually, that Prabhupada, that this refers to his teachers. But if you look elsewhere in the Majja Khanda, where Lord Chaitanya, during that Satyapaharya Bhava, Lord Chaitanya is addressed Advaita. He says, "Before I incarnated, you greatly endeavored to bring me. As you taught Bhagavad-gita, you had explained everything in relation to devotional service. But who is the proper candidate to understand your explanation?" Notice the same theme is here. If you did not find the devotional meaning of a verse, you would give up all enjoyment rather than find fault with the verse. This is how he's teaching, but you're teaching Bhagavad-gita, but if you couldn't find in the verse a devotional explanation, you got distressed. Being distressed, you went to sleep without eating. I then manifest myself before you. I considered your fasting my fasting, Lord Chaitanya says to Advaita Acharya. This is before I came, right? Therefore I appeared in your dream, and I spoke to you. Get up and eat, do not fast. Because of you I will incarnate. You got up and ate in satisfaction. Although I spoke to you directly, you thought it was a dream, he says to him. In this way, whenever some doubt arose during his recitation, that is of Bhagavad-gita, the Lord would directly speak to him in his dream. This is the Majja Khanda 116 to 125. And then Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur comments, whenever Advaita Prabhu's recitation of Bhagavad-gita created doubts in the minds of ordinary people and obstacles in extracting meanings favorable to devotional service, He heard the actual purport from Mahaprabhu during sleep. So that's when it took place, when he explained it, he says here. So that's where Bhagavad-gita, as it is, comes from Mahaprabhu. Yes?
What is the reference you mentioned in Chaitanya Charitamrita?
Well, Prabhupada mentions it in Adi 17:18.
Okay. Thank you, Prabhu. Adi 17:18.
Gitara Satyapatya. So I looked it up because in the Veda base there's now the Bhanuswami's, I think it's Bhanuswami's translation of with Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur's commentary. And Prabhupada's word come from Majjhikant 10:160 Satyapatya, where it says that he explained the actual purport to Advaita. But Prabhupada said he asked Advaita to explain the Bhagavad-gita. So then I started to look at, well, where did he ask Advaita to do it? Well, that's where, a little earlier in that chapter, in the dream, he told him the purport in the dream and used him to explain it that way. When he was trying to explain it to others, he was telling him this way. So Prabhupada actually has a history, and this is where it comes from, that's the origin of Bhagavad-gita as it is taken from tradition. Yeah. Go ahead. Well, we can talk now. I've talked a long time.
Thank you, Prabhu. Wonderful class. I had two questions. One is, you mentioned, you gave a new light to this meaning of Sankirtan. You said that it could, any activity which is performed together, thoroughly, intensely and perfectly. But a lot of the times when that word comes in the purport, it's translated as, and even we use it as, congregational chanting of the holy name.
Well, sun means together with devotees also, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
So, like, according to how you were explaining, Sankirtan can mean class together, it could mean book distribution together, it could mean scientific preaching, which Prabhupada also mentions in purport in 5th chapter. But why most of the times it is, when it comes in the congregational chanting of the holy name, the Sankirtan, is...
Usage changes, I guess, and that we start that way. I mean, we do Sankirtan in the temple when we have a kirtan. I mean, the ISKCON usage is when you do it in the temple, it's kirtan, but outdoors, it's Sankirtan. The meaning changes. I mean, once when I was a brand new GBC, and I was handed some. During a bad time in ISKCON, gone through a bad time, and I just to a certain temple, and there was one devotee, a brahmachari, who his usual service was to take some devotees out to the airport to distribute books. And I was standing there talking to the temple president, and this brahmachari came up and said, can we have the van to go to the airport for book distribution? And the temple president says, no. He says, we need it for Sankirtan. They were going out to the baseball stadium to distribute pennants and hats with the name of the baseball team on them to collect money. And that's when I realized the meaning of the word Sankirtan had changed. Because if it didn't bring in money, he said, no, we need it for Sankirtan. So things drift. sometime. Anyway, so that's not the usage of Sankirtan, but it does apply to all these things. When Lord Chaitanya, Param Vijayate Sri Krishna Sankirtanam, all of these things are there. When Sankirtan is fully realized, when it's Vijayate, when Sankirtan, these things will happen. There's a list. Cheto Darpana Marjanam. The heart will become, the dirty things will be removed. Bhava Maha Davagni Nirvapanam. You should see these things happen. The fire of conditional life, forest fire of material life will be did. And one after the other. Shreya Kairava Chandrika Vitaranam. That's an interesting one. Sankirtan is the Kairava. The Kairava is actually the night blooming lily. Technically it's lily, we call it the lotus, but it's a white night blooming. And Sankirtan is like the moonlight that causes that night blooming lily to open up and spread its fragrance. But that fragrance is Shreya, your ultimate good fortune. That is to say, your relationship with Krishna will be realized from this Sankirtan, which is the Chandrika, which is the moonlight that causes your whatever inside to open up and be Shreya Kariva Chandrika Vitaranam Vidya Vadu Jivanam. This is a conjugal metaphor in here. Vadu means a young wife or a bride, and Sankirtan is the bridegroom. Shreya Kariva Chandrika Vitaram Vidya Vadu Jivanam. And that bride is transcendental knowledge. Vidya Vadu. Transcendental compared to that awakens. Anandam Buddhi Vardhanam Patipadam Purnam Ritashvar, and then the ocean of transcendental increases. Then at every step, full taste. And these are the things that will happen. And then you become purified entirely. Sarvatma snapanam, it's a bath for the entire self. You may ask, how can anything that's so intense and be so pure? Well, because it's a snapanam. The whole self, body, mind, soul, intelligence, all becomes purified. These are the benedictions that take place when Sankirtan is achieved. So that doesn't mean just one thing or the other, but the whole endeavor of that. It is the Sankirtan movement. And Prabhupada did other things. Sankirtan is, we have temples, we have deities, these are all part and parcel of the whole thing to bring about this transformation. Like that. Mm-hmm.
Hare Krishna, thank you so much. Very nice class. I have a comment question. I was inspired by this discussion of Sankirtan. The prefix san not only means intensely and perfectly and completely, but also together. Mm-hmm. And that it was interesting that it means that, and it reminded me of the verse where Prahlad Maharaj is saying that some yogis will go to a secluded place and practice vow of silence for their own liberation, but I'm not satisfied unless others, yeah. I want to go to the towns and bring everybody along, right? Because it's not complete and perfect unless everybody's invited,
Mm-hmm. I think that's part of the meaning of Anandam Buddhi, the ocean that should always be increasing.
And the question was, in the beginning of class you talked about the Paribhasha Sutra of Bhagavatam. Do our acharyas tell us of the Bhagavad-gita shloka that's the Paribhasha?
Well, I haven't heard anyone mention in particular. Generally, Prabhupada focuses on in the last chapter, what? Sarvadhamman Purijyaja Mamekam Sharanam Braja, as sort of treats it that way. Yeah.
Thank you.
Next.
Hare Krishna Prabhu. So one of the purports that you were reading earlier on Srimad Bhagavatam, right? That you should not learn Bhagavatam from people engaged in sex life. So how do we understand that purport? Does it mean you cannot learn it from any grahastha?
You cannot leave from?
Does it mean you cannot learn Bhagavatam from any grahastha? Grahastha.
He sex. So Prabhupada talks about in some place it's in the Bhagavad-gita, the brahmachari grihastha. The grihastha is also considered a brahmachari who follows the strict principles in grihastha life. That is to say, sex for the propagation of children. And otherwise you abstain. Then you're considered a brahmachari, even though you're married.
Thank you very much, Prabhu. We have read this purports before, but when you read it, you're illuminating with your realizations, and it's so interesting and encouraging to read Bhagavatam with that attention. My question, two questions. One is, it said that we should have the speaker and the listener, but sometimes we can come to the temple and somebody who has realized speaks it and hear it, so we just read it. So at that time, how is the person served? And also sometimes we just hear Bhagavatam while doing something. But here Prabhupada says that simple hearing is not sufficient. So with rapt attention, when a day that's filled with so many things, even devotional activities, how is it that rapt attention, with just hearing in the tape, will it not serve the purpose? Means we do devote some time, but with rapt attention, how is that purpose served?
Well, Prabhupada did discourage having Bhagavatam as background, just something going on in the background all the time, Although, if you're driving a car, you want to have something playing, and so you can't always do it all the time. And I suspect it's better to have. For example, when you chant japa, japa means rapt attention. You can chant the Hare Krishna mantra on 3 levels. There's Namaparad, Namabhasa, and Shuddhanam. And so I can, that's Namaparad. I can chant and try to focus my mind on the holy name. When my mind goes away, I bring it back. And then the pure name, it just stays there. Then nothing distracts it. Haridas Thakur was chanting the holy name, distracted by the people, pounding on him with whips and whatever, You just don't notice anything else. But sometimes in different circumstances, it's not a good idea to do your japa while you're driving your car. On the other hand, Prabhupada was, when he was being driven and he noticed that the driver of the car was chanting Hare Krishna, sort of under his breath, that was good. Better he was chanting Hare Krishna, because driving your car usually doesn't take all your attention, and so it wasn't japa, it wasn't, the circumstance, but better you're thinking of Krishna, chanting Hare Krishna, to yourself while you're driving your car, but shouldn't count toward your rounds, ideally. So different circumstances, it may be different. So sometimes, you're cooking in the kitchen, you have a tape on, somebody's giving class, you're listening as best you can. Okay, it's better to have a tape of the class rather than you're listening to whatever kind of mundane stuff that may be on the radio. That's okay. But there has to be dedicated time, at least in my mind, to these certain crucial activities where you really are paying a deal of attention. Where's my dedicated time for japa? My dedicated time for deity worship, my dedicated time for... But ideally, like for example, if you're cooking and you're offering everything you cook to Krishna, so it'll be Krishna prasadam, you should be really fully absorbed in the service. You should think Krishna is going to eat this, I should make it very nicely. Think of how when Mother Yashoda was cooking for Krishna, what she was thinking about. It wasn't just the recipes, the ingredients, it was how Krishna's going to enjoy this, and and the feelings for Krishna were there in the food because he was going to please him. So we should get more and more toward those levels of that many of our activities, such as cooking, you can become fully absorbed in that so long as you're cooking for Krishna. Cleaning the temple can be the same way. I'm cleaning my heart. And you can turn that activity into full absorption in devotional service. And it's surprising how much of what we do be quite fully in Krishna consciousness. Yeah, you have to increase. Yeah. Just like, if I'm still on the planet, I can read this same text and I'll see things I didn't see before. I mean, there's no end to how much these things increase.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Thank you for the nice lecture, and it had many nice points. But one point that really I could relate to was the thing that where you mentioned become pure in mind through actions. I could relate that because if you don't work on purifying your actions, right, it's harder to progress in devotional life. So that was a very good point. Thank you.
Good. Yeah. That's why we are given a whole lifestyle by Srila Prabhupada, so that we can learn how to make all our actions. And as I said, even householders, people with mundane. I mean, Prabhupada, for a long time, he was maintaining his family, 6 children. They're expensive. Even those days in India, and he did his duty. I mean, he really was conscientious about it. And he was thought by his godbrothers to be not very important person because there was this Bhaktisiddhanta had created mutts, and it created acharyas and sannyasis living together in mutts, and that was the main thing. And the outside householders were not so important, and Prabhupada was that. I mean, practically he was running the Bombay temple at a certain point, but he was not still very important. And I think the temptation is always there to forget about advancement in Krishna consciousness. We're the opposite of the material world. In material activities, everybody wants to become bigger and bigger and bigger. In Krishna consciousness, you become bigger by becoming smaller. And people don't really know that very much. And I've seen in our own movement where we've had so many big leaders run into trouble and fall down, but they were on the path of becoming bigger and bigger. You know, and I you know, if I really want to become big deal, I have to take sannyas, and they take sannyas. And no, I also have to become a GBC to become GBC. And then I also must become a BBT trustee, and then become, you know, get all the points, things like this. And not everybody is like that, but some people were, you know, they say, wow, look at all they did, and then they ran into so much problems. But they were becoming bigger. So one has to, advancement in Krishna consciousness, we advance by becoming smaller. I mean, there's a point to being trinadapi sunichena, you know, a ball of dust or a part, you know, is very small, very, very tiny. And so that's what one has to become, like that. Trinadapi torari vasirishnu. And you know, if somebody insults you, you know, you're just like a tree, and it bounces. You don't take it seriously. Why did they say that about me? Or what about him? You know, and you get all involved in that kind of stuff, and it's very bad. So we see that very great devotee. You read Krishna's Kaviraj, you know, anybody who says my name will fall down. You know, I'm so. He actually felt. He actually felt like this. And therefore, sometimes spiritual people, they, oh, you're so masochistic, you know, you don't have proper self-esteem. Low self-esteem is a real problem. But devotees, these lower this seek out to be small, because the humbler we become, the more we can appreciate Krishna. And that love for Krishna increases. And that's so wonderful. Then they really want to become smaller because they can appreciate Krishna more and more. And that's why great devotees seek out that kind of thing. And if they do something that other people think important, they realize, I haven't done anything. Krishna's just been kind to me. I don't take any credit for it. You know, I'm an idiot, and mercy of my spiritual master saved me. Read Prabhupada's statement. I was told when I was a young man to preach in the West, I couldn't do anything because I was so attached to household, an old man. Then finally, in my fag end of my life, I came here to America to do something, to try to please my spiritual master, and I couldn't do anything. But my spiritual master sent you an American boys and girls, and you're helping me, and now at the end of my life I can say I've accomplished something. You know, that what about himself? And if you were actually in Srila Prabhupada's person, you know, he was like that. He just was not in full of himself at all. It was quite the difference. I remember one time in New York, we were seeing Prabhupada, and when Prabhupada was leaving airports, it was more fun than when he was coming, because coming was always a big thing, you know, but sometimes it was just a small, intimate group of people taking him when he was leaving. So he was leaving a New York airport. But this time, because it was a festival, there was a kind of a crowd, not as big as when he arrived, but still. So Prabhupada, in those days, airports, you could go all the way up to the boarding gates, you know, and all this other stuff. So Prabhupada came into the boarding gate, and he was surrounded by a lot of devotees came in with him, and he was sitting on the seat, and other devotees were sitting on seats, and some on the floor, and they were just talking intimately with each other, you know, familiarly. It wasn't a ceremony. And then people were standing around trying to hear what the conversation was about. I was sort of on the outside of the group, you know, so okay, I didn't make it into the close thing. But because I noticed that there were other passengers who were boarding the plane, and they couldn't even get in the boarding area because the devotee was filled with devotees. And one of the gate agents was trying to get devotees to move. And they would they would come and tap them on the shoulder, and they just brush them off and pay attention. So I thought, well, this doesn't look very good for ISKCON, you know, we're not being like civil. And so I tried to get some devotees to get out of the way, and they did the same thing to me. They just brushed me aside. So then our GBC was Rupanuga was next to me, and he has command presence, as they say in the military. So Rupanuga tried to get people to move, and they wouldn't do anything. So finally what Rupanuga did, there was a little table, you know, he had these rows of chairs with tables cemented to the end. So he jumped up on one of these tables and he went like this, "All devotees, leave the boarding area immediately." And all these people looked up at him all shocked and offended. And before anybody could move, Prabhupada got up and started to walk out. And Prabhupada said, and Rupanuga said, "Not Prabhupada." So, but Prabhupada was really walking out. You know, here was Rupanuga yelled at him to get out, and he got up and was. So that's Prabhupada's natural mood was shown that way. You know, so this is advancement in Krishna consciousness, and you get in an institution, you may find people that we bring to it, you know, things from IBM or these other kind of places, or Apple or wherever, people are all striving to get ahead, or from the university. It's all nonsense. You know, it won't help us. Yeah. He has the microphone. Oh, he has two microphones. Okay. No. Yeah, go ahead.
Dandavats, Prabhu. Prabhu, you mentioned that point, the moon, the descriptions given in Bhagavatam about Mount Meru and the earth, the moon being closer. And that was a wonderful purport and the translation which you actually showed us, that it is that as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, this cosmic manifestation, that is how it is. So I was wondering if there is some way to explain this point to the non-devotees or the mundane scholars, because they usually take on these points to dismiss Bhagavatam, saying that it is mythology.
Yeah, sure.
So they say, see, it was wrong in these counts, so obviously the other thing is also wrong. So.
Well, it's interesting that you want to tell them about that. Mostly my concern is telling devotees about it. Because a lot of people, I mean, it's a natural thing. What I would do when I first read Bhagavatam, the things that I couldn't understand or couldn't grasp, I assumed they were true, I just put them in brackets. And then later on, things would become clear. Even, you know, the whole Varna system for a long time, a hard time to accept that one. And I did the same thing with the fifth canto. Where I put it in brackets. And Prabhupada, he just never on this one. And I said, I mean, when the devotees, when the fifth canto came out, people were freaking out. As we used to say in those days, they were really having crises of faith. And what Prabhupada did around that same time is in Los Angeles, told reporters that they didn't go to the moon. And the reason was that the moon is further than the sun. And then he gave an argument they couldn't refute, that Sunday comes before Monday. He did. And nobody said anything like, what was that to do, you know, but that was his argument, that Sunday comes before Monday. Prabhupada gave different ways that they different things. One is there's the hoax hypothesis, which is as is following. the whole thing is rigged, you know, done in special effects studios. One is the hoax. One was they went to Rahu. They may have landed to the moon. The moon is a heavenly planet. The third one, what did I say? The hoax, the Rahu, and I just flew out of my head. This happens as you get old. Sometimes you lose your train of thought.
We haven't said earlier, right? So
Yeah, we haven't even been to the Earth. The other one was that that they could have gone to the moon, but they couldn't enter into the atmosphere. That's right. I'm sorry. So that's true. They didn't enter the atmosphere. Everybody believes that. So they could have somehow gone there. And that's why, yeah, well, we haven't even been to the Earth. I mean, people see the Earth differently too. Now, the question I don't know is, does the way we see the Earth and the world around us through our limited senses, can you map it onto the Bhagavatam in some way? I have no idea. I mean, I think there's always room for further research. To me, we need a science of biocosmology. The universe is a living being. I happened to, somehow I was looking at some medical book in Sanskrit, you know, parts of it, or at least a translation with one. But the name in the medical book for the spinal column is Merudanda. Well, then okay, there's Mount Meru, and then you have those like the hip bones, those mountains, and so it is a kind, and you have the life airs. Think of the devas as sort of neural nexuses that, you know, I mean, now people have discovered, been digging around in the body for so many years in the West, finally discovered the enteric brain. There's so many neurons around your guts, a whole brain system. And, you know, how many other brains there are, nobody has yet figured it out. I mean, when somebody said to Prabhupada once, in the role of a devotee, in the role of a modern science, but Prabhupada, we haven't seen. He said, what have you seen? He said, the inside of your mother's womb. You know, we are like, what have we seen? What, I mean, if you look at history, it's all the time. I mean, history is what happened. Itihasa, you know, it's there in the past. It's fixed. The future is there, you know, changing, but the past, it changes as much as the future. Read history books. You know, and I can take a history book and I can tell you the century it was written in, because it's changed. The past keeps changing. They always keep finding new things. As far as the fossil record goes, you know, 80% of it's gone. It's just eroded away. It's not in existence anymore. It's not even there to find. And then they keep finding something new, and oh, we're wrong about this. Oh, we're wrong about that. Oh, you know. In my lifetime, dinosaurs changed from lizards to birds. You know, I mean, what do we know? That's the first thing. What the hell do we know? Almost nothing. And what we do know is all wrong. That's my first thing. Sense perception is not really very reliable form of knowledge. Lots of philosophers have noticed this. And once you get a little bit remote from immediates, even what's in front of you, you have a hard time sometimes. You know, when eyewitnesses, there's been research about people who have seen an accident. I mean, people's memories are so crappy. I'm sorry to use that word. It's so bad. and anyway, it's Kali Yuga. I don't have very high expectations for anybody to understand anything anymore. I'm not really particularly worried about it. All I can say is this is the way the universe appears to the Lord, and I would assume the Devas to some extent. The Devas are the controlling people in the universe. I asked Prabhupada personally, Krishna is all-powerful, why does he need so many Devatas to run a universe? And Prabhupada said to me, you don't know how to run a universe, which is true. Because, Prabhupada always says 330 million, right? No, 300 million, 33 million. But it's actually 33 crore, only 333 million. That's how many devas there are. Which, to me, is like a nervous system, I mean, like there's a whole lot of devas around. So we only see like a little bitty slice of what's going on around us. And even what we can see, we get wrong. And it's Kali Yuga, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Prabhu, I had this question about the statement about Buddhi, which Srila Prabhupada uses, the form direction of the Super Soul.
Mm-hmm.
If you can shed more light, very atypical word, form direction.
Yeah, he tells us how we can search out the Super Soul using that. This term, form direction, he used it in the second canto. I can find it for you. And it's really worth reading that purport many, many times. It's one of those that opens up. This second, I'll find it in the Veda base. Yeah, it's very interesting. It's 2:235. The verse is the translation of the verse. The personality of Godhead, Lord Sri Krishna, is in every living being along with the soul, and this fact is perceived and hypothesized in our act of seeing and taking help from the intelligence by buddhi. What says buddhi adibihi. So Prabhupada says how you can perceive the Supreme Lord by reason and perception. Actually, the Lord is not perceivable by our present materialized senses. Notice he says materialized senses. The senses are originally spiritual, and they've become corrupted by the use of them in sense gratification. So, by chanting the Hare Krishna mantra, we are using our senses. Just when we do japa, there's the tongue, there's the ear. The tongue is both a karmendriya and a gyanendriya. So we're dematerializing our senses. You have to be, the world to a person whose senses are dematerialized will look differently. Yeah? He can but when one is convinced of the presence of the Lord by a practical service attitude, so that's how we have to be convinced. There has to be a practical service attitude. In other words, the senses have to be engaged in Krishna service. When we see that act of sense gratification is the act of atheism. I am the enjoyer, here's the sense to enjoy. Then God disappears. Even religions that have, regulated sense gratification, okay, God is there, but he's over there somewhere. He's up there in heaven. He's very remote. I'll go to him when I die, but actually his job is remotely to arrange for my sense gratification. Right? This karma kanda religion. If you really want God to appear there, then we have to use our senses not for our own enjoyment, but for Krishna's pleasure. When we honor prasadam, we say, oh, this tastes so good, Krishna must have really liked it. I'm not thinking of myself as the enjoyer of this food. Anyway, all the senses, this is the practical, when Prabhupada says practical service attitude, that I am not using my senses when I am the enjoyer of the result or of the activity. And it says, so then there is a revelation by the Lord's mercy. And revelation just simply means what's there gets shown. And such a pure devotee can perceive the Lord's presence always and everywhere. He can perceive that intelligence is the form direction of the Paramatma plenary portion of the personality of Godhead. So when he uses this term form direction, that he is the form of the Lord by which he's giving us direction. And then he gives a procedure for the common man. There's a whole thing to go through this. We don't really have the time. Because he takes us through this procedure of how we are operating. It's very interesting. Here's my hand. I want to move my hand. It goes up. How did I do that? I have not the faintest idea. All I know is this piece, it goes, and it's not me, it's my body. And how does my desire to move the hand and the movement take place? Ultimately, super soul's involved. We don't do any of this. And it's not just our own body working. The neurologists are going to have a problem because they run into the super soul gap somewhere when because they can't figure out how this fits in. I mean, just my ability to undergo experiences. That's what we mean by consciousness. See, this pair of cartels, right? Is a thing in the material world. My body is a thing in the material world. But I undergo experiences. I'm not just an object. I'm a subject. I have significance for myself. This pair of cartels only has significance for others. Prabhupada said, what is the difference between a live body and a dead body? You know? And ultimately, it's this consciousness means the ability to undergo experiences, to have significance for myself. And materially, when you investigate the body, you never get to consciousness. It doesn't fit in. That's because it's a different ontological entity. It's not a thing. It's consciousness. It's irreducible. And there's these two things that come together to make the world. It's the Krishna's one energy is his Prakriti, Bina Prakriti Asada, and the other energy is the Jivas. And they come together. The one doesn't come out of the other. They're fastened together. And who fastens them together is the super soul. It makes this particular group of conglomeration of matter relevant to this particular jiva in a certain way that it's not relevant to the jivas in the other bodies or in the trees outside or whatever, wherever they're jivas. I assume that this table is a swarm of jivas too, with very little bodies, since they're supposedly in the atoms too, you know. This can't, you just can't get there. You keep reading about it all the time, you know, neurologists trying to figure out what is consciousness, and it just doesn't fit together. And that's because it's just a different category of things. So Prabhupada says you can feel your own existence, then you can feel you're not the body. Now, how can you feel you're not the body? Well, you can feel the hand, the leg, the head, the limbs. Yeah, they're there, but I'm conscious of them. See, there's the consciousness and what I'm conscious of. The consciousness is the self, and the things I am conscious of is the not self. So then what he has to do is draw the boundary back. See, here's the conventional boundary between the self and the not self, my skin, right? And we say that, you know, oh, I hurt myself. I hurt my finger, you know, but anyway. But then you pull it back, and then we identify the whole body, the mind, more with the self. But then I'm conscious of my mind thinking. I'm conscious my mind becomes filled with rage. I'm conscious of you know, all these mental activities. So Prabhupada does this using, you notice how we're discriminating between the self and the things that are seen, right? The seer is the self and the things that are seen. So you pull back the boundary, and then the subtle body are objects of perception, and these are all the mind, intelligence, and even the ego are all subtle forms of nature. So we can observe the mind and is working, so he wants that the seer is spirit and the seeing is material. Then at this point he says, now how do we go through this procedure? We can distinguish what allows us to make this discrimination between the self and the not self. He says that is supersoul. That is the super self guiding and supplying us according to these directions. That he allows us to make that discrimination. And then he says that the self and the super self can't be on the same level. Anyway, you can go through this like this, but by this you can really come to first the idea of yourself as being not the body, which at a certain age becomes very good news. And which is even better, I'm not the mind. Because the mind is really has got garbage in it that stays there, you know. I still got part of my mind that can probably, you know, do like a 1950s disc jockey and stuff that doesn't quite go away. And then there's, you know, from past lives that are still there affecting us because it goes with you. You know, death means the separation of the subtle from the gross body, but you're not liberated from the subtle body at the time of death. And because you still have a subtle body, you get another gross body. So the real liberation is liberation from the subtle body. And so you have to start looking at your own mind as a stranger. Just as my gross body is a stranger, so my subtle body is the not self. But to become a self, that personality that we truly are, that just like each of us are individuals with our own individual capacity, which comes out in relationship to other people. So similarly, in relationship to Krishna, we come to find out who we are and our actual relationship as a spiritual being. It develops in that way. We're not like, I mean, it's very interesting if you read the Yoga Sutras or you look at Sankhya Yoga, you become isolated. I mean, it's really fascinating. It's kind of an interesting performance of just withdrawing, you know, the consciousness away from everything else until you're just really isolated. I mean, the non-theistic Sankhya ends up with a bunch of isolated jivas. And the main thing is they're not suffering. But they're not in any contact with either other jivas or with the Supreme Lord. They're just isolated. That's where the non-theistic or atheistic Sankhya takes you. It's kind of process. This is sort of like that. But for us to find out our true selves is a relationship. It's relationship with Krishna, and through Krishna, through all the devotees. Prabhupada said in one letter, in the spiritual sky we shall have another ISKCON there. Yeah, without a GBC, I suppose, but otherwise who would want to go? But we are related as spiritual beings. I assume the ISKCON will be in Chaitanya Lila, by the way, because I mean everybody who was a Chaitanya Bhakta was not a Krishna Bhakta. I mean, Murari Gupta was a Ram Bhakta. So they would have so we have two positions spiritually. One in Krishna Lila and one in Chaitanya Lila. And that transcendent ISKCON will be in Chaitanya Lila with Prabhupada and all the people who made it back to Godhead. And I assume there'll be a stream of people coming. Some people, you know, some of us will have to churn again a few times maybe before we go back to Godhead, but we'll get there, you know. Yeah. It'll grow. Yeah. Yeah, you have a question?
Yes, thank you so much. It was very enlivening to know Srila Prabhupada on the books and then finally opening society for finding the readers to associate. So that was a good point, Prabhuji. Thank you so much. Couple of times or more you actually talked about GBC, and my question will be more on that aspect. You also, here actually, at least we are very lucky to have leadership of Vaisheshika Prabhu where everything is going in good way. And we like to see more and more times you coming here because, just listening to one purport probably unknowingly would have gone through but not realizing anything out. So please come. That's our request to you more times.
Sure, I'll be happy. It was a nice place to be.
Yeah, here we go.
Thanks to modern transportation, we can do these things.
So the question was more on, say for example, when you made a point that just wait for what happens ISKCON in India, and whenever small trips we make in India, also we see there's a difference already between how ISKCON Vrindavan runs and ISKCON Mayapur runs, and now with so much of inflow of attention, monetary going in Mayapur, also Srila Prabhupada's disciples disappearing, where next generation Srila Prabhupada's gurus are coming, unknowingly disciples, grand disciples, not understanding mood, they're taking, that my guru is the... There are various problems going. You at a GBC level, Prabhu, how are we ensuring that the mood and mission of Srila Prabhupada is kind of intact and polarization of India doesn't happen that way?
I've retired from the GBC. You should know that right now. I've been liberated. From that, I did that service for a long time. It's very, very difficult service to do. I find out that individual GBCs are generally appreciated in the places that know them and their work are liked. When they all come together as a body, they're not liked. I assume probably because it's a legislative body, there's a German saying that two things don't bear looking at. What one goes into the makage of sausage and what goes into the makage of legislation. So it's inherently it's like Mission Impossible, and somehow it's getting along. But I mean, the one thing the GBC really tried to do is consciously provide for the future. I mean, I know myself from the history of religions that when the original, like in Christianity, a big change when the original witnesses of people who knew Jesus left. It's a whole nother thing that will happen. And that's when maybe the Gospels got written down. And you see people are writing their memoirs of Prabhupada and like that. And my particular, I wrote a book about Prabhupada's position as founder acharya, expressly preparing for this time. You know, because Prabhupada's position of founder acharya should be as firm or even more firm, even for the people that did not personally know him. Because that founder acharya, because here's how you should think of ISKCON. I said there's another ISKCON in the spiritual sky. That's it. You know, this is what you see down here is part of it. It's like the training entry level programming to get into the real ISKCON. And then gradually, in this ISKCON, there'll be some people who are qualified to live in the ISKCON in the spiritual world, but come down. Others who delay going for different purposes. There's a great deal of. I suppose there may be an ISKCON in other planets too. Prabhupada said we'll have another ISKCON in the spiritual sky, and I figured some people maybe want to hang out for a while in Indraloka, you know. But you have to come back down again and go back up. This, and what I like about the temple of the Vedic planetarium, you know, that is kind of embodies the transition. It shows us the world as Krishna sees it, or at least a map of the world as Krishna sees it, because the map is still, again, not the territory. It abstracts from reality, but that shows the path back to Godhead. It should really function. The reason why our central temple is in Mayapur is that's where Lord Chaitanya appeared. And Mayapur is not just the place that Lord Chaitanya appeared. Mayapur is itself the descended spiritual abode. And there's a transcendent Mayapur of Chaitanya Leela. And I assume that there will be communication back and forth for the future of ISKCON. Prabhupada has told us everything we need to know, really, to make spiritual advancement. Now, for all of us, here's the path of Krishna consciousness, right? Here's the beginning, and the pure devotee end of things. There's lots of, it's a long way. I think for us, it doesn't matter so much whether one is here or here or here or here. People will be strung out along this path. The main thing is, wherever we are, what we should judge people by is not where they are on this path. we should if somebody is sincerely trying to get better, that person's in good shape. If I may get so far this way, this direction, up on the path, and then forward, you can slide back. So the thing I should be concerned about as an individual devotee is, what do I need to do to make spiritual? What's the next step? There may be, if you look at the whole thing, you go, you know, it can't be too much. But we just take, what is the next step? And if I am seriously inquiring about me, what's the next thing I need to do, and I pray to Krishna, what's the next thing I need to do to make advancement, you'll know. In fact, you'll know that you always knew, but just weren't paying attention. And take that step. Just take that step. Just deal with that one step. I mean, I know this is like Alcoholics Anonymous, but really, it's good advice. And as we make advancement, we take the next step, things will open up. Oh, and now I see the next step. Take that step. Take that step. And that's really what I need to be concerned with. Some bad habits, some attachment, some whatever it may be. Your life may not be comfortable, because sometimes Krishna, to show us the next step, will, you know, rattle our cages somewhat and let us know things that we not particularly don't want to become conscious of. But go ahead, take the step. But anyone who's sincerely advancing in Krishna consciousness is a devotee. And we should be taking that step. And if we're doing that, we'll also be in a position to help others. And when we help others, Krishna becomes very, very kind to us, and then we can also make more advancement that way. And then we'll think, well, not only should I go back to Godhead, but I should try to help bring other people too. No, that's my advice. And yeah, Krishna will take. I mean, Prabhupada is, Bhaktisiddhanta had a mission, and to some extent it looks like it collapsed. And he became, Bhaktisiddhanta became a little disgusted with his main preachers, withdrew them, told the Maharaj to poor, don't give him any money. You know, and Bhaktisiddhanta left. The Gaudiya Math split up into different factions, and there was a gap. When they came to the West in 1933, if you look at what they were doing, they were so focused on going to the West. Bhaktisiddhanta quickly got temples all over India, a couple in Burma, and then you know, the next thing was they were so focused on that. And Prabhupada's watch what he did, you know, that they had a 3-volume plan work in English to bring, you know, the Sri Krishna Chaitanya, that Nishikant Sanyal, that they brought one book with them when they left. But it was 1933 they went. 1933, Hitler came to power in Germany. I mean, literally all hell was about to break loose. And it did. You know, by 1939, 6 years later, World War II breaks out. And there was a pause. You know, preaching was just, everybody had to wait until, you know, how many millions of 70 million people died or whatever it was. God, I don't know. But anyway, that had to happen. And then when Prabhupada came, it was the right time. And basically, he came, you know, one thing I've learned is Krishna's in charge of timing. And he, you know, Prabhupada castigates himself. I didn't go sooner, but, you know, he arrived at the right time. And so that's when it started up. And then, boom, very, very quickly. So there's a rhythm to things. We don't know what Krishna, how the plan is working. The more of us that make ourselves Krishna's instrument, the faster things will go. Krishna's looking for the willing people, because he can't force anybody to be a devotee. It's freedom. It requires our consent. He's looking for people to empower, but we have to make ourselves available. And sense gratification is the act of atheism. We're not available for Krishna. And so the more of us do that, so if you're worried about the future of ISKCON, we should each think, what can I do? What's my next step? And if we're willing and eager to surrender to Krishna, he'll bend heaven and earth to give us all facility. So that's sort of the practical thing I can come up with in this matter. We're over time now, right? That's after. So we should stop now, huh? Anything? Yeah.
It's been a life-changing experience just sitting with you for a few hours and hearing what comes out from your heart. And I think also that we don't even realize how much our life is changing by having sadhu sangha. But later on, as we continue with our devotional service, we realize how much effect having the association of a devotee who has realized the knowledge and can present it in a way that we can understand in our lives. So Ravindra Prabhu, we thank you very much from the bottom of our hearts for coming here and holding forth here at ISV. I didn't get the numbers from the internet today, but there were a lot of... Do you have the number? We'd like to thank all of our internet viewers today. Please, everyone, give them a hand and welcome. Sure, all of them and all of us, we can join together in thanking Ravindra Prabhu one more time for coming all the way here and giving us his association. Please.
I have to thank you for your association. I really very enlivened and enlivening group of devotees here, and especially like Vaisheshika Prabhu. I met him when he was like 17 or something. This big, tall guy with huge hands and feet. I think my wife party for the first time. He just received second initiation. He come to do Sankirtan in Philadelphia. He's my favorite I told him once that he's revived my faith in book distribution. We went through a very discouraging period, at least to me, discouraging period. He was probably never discouraged, but anyway, I was. And his book that's coming out is really, I was able to ask me to look at some of it, and it's a great book. He's doing much more for the Sankirtan movement than I can ever do. You're very fortunate.
Actually, Ravindra Prabhu kindly wrote the foreword for the book. And to do that, he had to read the book. And he was reading it as it was coming out, actually. We weren't completely finished at that time. But his oversight has been invaluable. There's a way in which when somebody is so refined in their understanding of how to communicate in writing, and they're at the same time realized a few points here and there can actually alter the meaning and the tenor of an entire chapter. So he's very kindly alter in a way that makes it more clear and come out in ways that we weren't expecting.
Yeah, I didn't mean to screw out any additional meaning. I just thought I saw what was in there and could bring it out, what you already had, and bring it out a little more. Yeah.
So that it was, we felt, and Keshav Bharti Maharaj also working on the book, and over the last few months, we developed a really close relationship, closer. We were already feeling close. In fact, when I went to Philadelphia, because some devotees there were working together to help bring up the book distribution, and Prabhu was the temple president at the time, and also the GBC, and we had a meeting with the council there, and we, meaning the Sankirtan team I was assisting, had a lot of requests. And before the meeting, some of them were saying, well, we can't do things. It's just too much to ask. But we sat down with Ravindra Svarupa Prabhu, and the person kept reading off the list, asking, we need a new book room. He would say, granted. He'd say, we need a bulletin board downstairs. Granted. Everyone he kept granting over and over again. And I looked at him and I said, wow, you're really in this. He said, I was there. I was there with Prabhupada. I saw what his mood was and about book distribution. He said it was such strength and conviction that it really moved me. And I felt really indebted to him for that mood. And that's why I asked him to write the foreword, besides the stature that he has of being one of the trendsetters in ISKCON as far as guiding the ideology of our movement in significant ways. And so it's been an edifying and very powerful experience working with you. And we hope that this is the beginning of a regular and long relationship with you and all the devotees here in our community.
Oh, that'd be
One
very
more time,
merciful.
Ravindra Svarupa Prabhu, please.
Thank you very much.